September 25th, 1493. You're standing on the docks of Cadiz, Spain, watching the largest fleet ever assembled for the New World prepare to sail. 17 ships, 1,200 men, enough supplies to build an entire city. Columbus is back, and this time, he's not here to explore. He's here to conquer. Here's what's crazy. Just 1 year ago, Columbus stumbled onto islands he thought were Asia. He'd brought back a handful of gold trinkets, some bewildered indigenous people, and wild stories about paradise. Now, watch what happens. The Spanish crown didn't send scientists. They didn't send diplomats or teachers or farmers who wanted to build something beautiful. They sent conquistadors, soldiers, gold hunters, men who believed they had a divine right to everything they touched. And what happened next? It triggered the largest genocide in human history, the complete transformation of 2 continents, the birth of the Atlantic slave trade, and a death toll so catastrophic, we're still trying to comprehend it 500 years later. This is the story of Columbus's second voyage. The voyage that changed everything. And I gotta warn you, this one's dark.
¡Carguen los cañones!
Let me paint you a picture of what this fleet actually looked like. Because here's the thing, Columbus's first voyage, 3 tiny ships, 90 men. They were barely surviving on salt pork and hardtack biscuits. This time, 17 ships, 1,200 men, 20 cavalry horses, the first horses to touch American soil in 10,000 years. Attack dogs, cannons, crossbows, full-plate armor, enough weapons to wage a war. But wait, it gets more interesting. Columbus didn't just bring soldiers. Get this, he brought farmers, blacksmiths, carpenters, masons, and even a doctor. He brought wheat seeds, chickens, pigs, cattle, and grapevines from Europe. Why? Because this wasn't an exploration mission anymore. This was colonization. The Spanish crown had given Columbus a new title, Admiral of the Ocean Sea and Viceroy of the Indies. That's not an explorer's title. That's a governor's title. They were building an empire. And every single person on those ships, they'd been promised something. Gold. Spoiler alert, that was a lie. But these men didn't know that yet. They sailed across the Atlantic dreaming of treasure, imagining themselves returning to Spain as wealthy men. What they found instead, indigenous people living their lives, farming, fishing, celebrating, communities that had existed peacefully for thousands of years. And these Spanish conquistadors looked at those people and saw one thing: free labor. November 3rd, 1493. After 5 weeks at sea, they spot land. But here's where the things get weird. Columbus first lands in the Caribbean, an island chain he names for himself. Then he sails to Hispaniola, where he'd left 39 men from his first voyage at a fort called La Navidad. You're standing on the deck as the ships approach the shore. You're expecting to see your friends waving from the beach. Maybe they've built a whole settlement by now. Maybe they're surrounded by gold. The fort is destroyed, burned to the ground, not a single structure standing. And those 39 men, they were dead. Every single one of them. And here's what happened, and this is where it gets really dark. Those 39 Spaniards Columbus left behind, they didn't come to make friends. They immediately started enslaving the Taino people, kidnapping women, stealing food, taking gold by force. The Taino leader, a chief named Caonabo, finally had enough. He attacked the fort, killed every Spaniard inside, burned it all down. And honestly, you can't blame him. But Columbus? He didn't see it that way. He saw rebellion. He saw indigenous people who needed to be taught a lesson. And what came next would make La Navidad look like a mercy killing.
Más rápido con esos troncos. La iglesia debe estar lista. ¡Cuidado, cuidado!
Columbus makes a decision. They're not rebuilding at La Navidad. Too many memories, too much blood. Instead, they sail 60 miles east and found a new settlement. January 1494, La Isabela, named after Queen Isabella of Spain, the first permanent European settlement in the Americas. And from the very beginning, it's a disaster. Picture this. You've got 1,200 European men who've never seen a tropical climate. They're wearing wool and metal armor in 90-degree heat. The humidity is suffocating. Mosquitoes are everywhere. Within weeks, hundreds of them are sick. Malaria, dysentery, yellow fever. Men are dying faster than they can bury them. The food situation, even worse. They brought wheat seeds to plant European crops. But guess what? Wheat doesn't grow in Caribbean soil. The seeds rot, the crops fail, they're starving. And here's the thing that's actually insane. They're surrounded by indigenous people who know how to farm this land. The Taino people have been successfully growing cassava, corn, sweet potatoes, and tropical fruits for centuries. These Spanish conquistadors could have just, asked for help, learned from them, traded fairly. But no, instead, Columbus implements something that would define Spanish colonialism for the next 300 years. And if you've never heard of it, buckle up, because this is where things go from bad to catastrophic.
¡Más rápido! ¡Pónganse en fila ahora mismo!
Okay, here's how the Encomienda system worked. And I want you to pay close attention, because the Spanish crown tried to make this sound noble. They tried to make it sound like they were helping indigenous people. It was slavery, pure and simple. Here's the official version. Spanish colonists, encomienders, were granted groups of indigenous people. In exchange for protecting them and teaching them Christianity, these indigenous people would provide labor and tribute. Sounds almost reasonable, right? Here's what actually happened. Spanish soldiers would round up entire Taino villages, families, children, elders, everyone. They'd assign them to a Spanish master. And from that moment on, those indigenous people were slaves in everything but name. The men were forced into gold mines, digging, panning, hauling rocks 12 to 16 hours a day. No breaks, barely any food. If you didn't find enough gold, you were beaten, sometimes killed. The women were forced to farm Spanish crops, grind corn for hours, serve in Spanish households. Many were sexually assaulted by their masters. Families were ripped apart. Children were separated from parents, husbands from wives. The Taino people had no rights. They couldn't leave. They couldn't refuse. They couldn't even complain without risking death. And here's the thing that makes this even more twisted. Columbus personally participated in this. In 1495, just 2 years after landing, Columbus organized slave raids. He captured 1,500 Taino people and shipped 550 of them back to Spain to be sold in slave markets. 200 died on the voyage, just died in this ship's hold. The survivors were paraded through the streets of Seville in chains. Queen Isabela actually objected to this. She said indigenous people were her subjects and shouldn't be enslaved. But you know what she didn't do? Stop it. The Encomienda system continued. It spread from Hispaniola to Cuba to Puerto Rico to Mexico to Peru. It lasted for 3 centuries. Millions of indigenous people, we're talking millions, were worked to death under the system. And it all started right here in 1493 with Columbus's second voyage.
Observe the virus multiplying within the cell. This microscopic event translates to a macro problem.
But here's where the story takes a turn that no one saw coming. Not Columbus, not the Spanish, not the Taino people. There was a killer on those 17 ships. Something way deadlier than any sword or cannon. Smallpox, measles, typhus, influenza, diseases. And here's what makes this so catastrophic. Indigenous Americans had zero immunity to these diseases. None. Their immune systems had never encountered them. Let me explain why this matters. When Europeans evolved over thousands of years, living in close contact with domesticated animals, cows, pigs, chickens, they developed immunity to certain diseases. Smallpox originally came from cattle, influenza from pigs and birds. European children got sick, and many died, but some survived and developed immunity. Indigenous Americans didn't domesticate those animals. They had dogs, llamas in South America, but nothing like Europe's crowded farms full of livestock. So when a Spanish colonist landed in the Caribbean, it was like dropping a match in a forest that had never seen fire. Here's what a smallpox outbreak looked like. One infected person arrives in a Taino village. Maybe they're showing symptoms, maybe they're not yet. They interact with the community, shake hands, share food, breathe the same air. Within days, people start getting sick. Fever, aches, then the rash appears. Pustules covering their entire body. Painful, oozing, unbearable. 30% mortality rate. That means 3 out of every 10 people who caught it died. But here's what's even worse. When a disease hits a population with no immunity, that mortality rate skyrockets. In indigenous communities, smallpox killed 50 to 90% of infected people. Imagine your entire
family getting sick at once. Everyone. Your parents, your kids, your siblings, all at the same time. Who takes care of the sick when everyone is sick? Who harvests the food? Who brings water? Entire villages were wiped out, just gone. And the worst part? The Taino people thought it was supernatural. They thought the Spanish gods were punishing them, or that the Spanish themselves had magical powers. They didn't understand germ theory. Nobody did back then. So they kept their same burial practices, kept living in close quarters, kept trying traditional medicine that couldn't touch these foreign diseases. By 1508, just 15 years after Columbus's second voyage, the Taino population on Hispaniola had dropped from an estimated 300,000 people to 60,000. By 1548, fewer than 500 Taino people remained. We're talking about a 99% death rate. An entire civilization, thousands of years of culture, language, traditions, knowledge nearly erased from existence. And it wasn't just Hispaniola. This pattern repeated across both American continents for the next century. Historians estimate that disease killed between 80 and 90% of the entire indigenous population of the Americas. Let that sink in. 90%.
Meanwhile, Columbus has a major problem. Remember all those promises about gold, about rivers full of gold nuggets, about getting rich beyond imagination? It was all nonsense. There was gold on Hispaniola, but not much. Definitely not enough for 1,200 greedy Spaniards who'd crossed an ocean expecting to fill their pockets. So what does Columbus do? He implements a tribute system. And this is where things get absolutely insane. Every Taino person over the age of 14 was required to deliver a certain amount of gold to the Spanish every 3 months. How much gold? A hawksbellful. That's about the size of a thimble. Doesn't sound like much, right? Except the gold didn't exist. There literally wasn't enough gold on the island for everyone to meet their quota. So here's what happened. Indigenous people would spend months desperately panning rivers, digging through rocks, searching everywhere for gold dust. If they brought their tribute on time, they received a copper token to wear around their neck, proving they paid. If they didn't, and their hands were cut off. Let me say that again. If a Taino person failed to bring enough gold that didn't exist in the quantities demanded, Spanish soldiers would cut off their hands and leave them to bleed to death. Spanish priest Bartolomé de las Casas, who witnessed this firsthand, wrote in his accounts that he saw piles of severed hands. Piles. The Taino people were so desperate, so terrorized, that some of them committed suicide rather than face this impossible system. Mothers killed their own children to spare them from Spanish brutality. Entire communities drank poisonous cassava juice, choosing death over enslavement. And Columbus? He sent letters back to Spain complaining that the indigenous people were lazy and rebellious. The cognitive dissonance is staggering.
For the king! Crush them! Retreat! They are too strong!
But here's the thing about humans. We don't break easily. The Taino people fought stack. And one leader's name you need to know? Caonabo. Remember him? The chief who destroyed Fort La Navidad and killed those first 39 Spaniards? He wasn't done. In 1494, Caonabo organizes a massive resistance movement. He unites multiple Taino chiefs, something that had never happened before. Different villages, different tribes, all coming together for one purpose: drive the Spanish into the sea. They attacked Spanish patrols, ambushed supply lines, burned Spanish props. They knew the jungle terrain. They were fast. They were organized. For a moment, just a moment, it looked like they might actually win. But Columbus had something the Taino didn't: horses. Remember, Indigenous Americans had never seen horses before. These animals went extinct in the Americas 10,000 years ago. So when Spanish cavalry charged, it was like facing monsters. Four-legged creatures that moved faster than any human, ridden by armored soldiers wielding steel swords. The psychological impact was devastating. Add in attack dogs, war dogs trained to tear people apart, cannons and steel armor that Taino weapons couldn't penetrate. The rebellion was crushed. Caonabo was captured through deception. Columbus invited him to a peace negotiation, then had him put in chains the moment he arrived. He was sent to Spain as a prisoner. He died on the voyage, either from disease or, some historians believe, he was murdered. After that, organized Taino resistance basically collapsed. Some fled to the mountains, some to neighboring islands, but most were enslaved under the Encomienda system until disease or exhaustion killed them. By 1500, the Taino civilization that had thrived for over 1,000 years was effectively finished. By 1496, La Isabela is a nightmare. Half the colonists are dead from disease, the survivors are starving, there's no gold, the indigenous population is being decimated, rebellion is constant, and Columbus, he's losing control. Spanish colonists are complaining to the crown. They're writing letters saying, "You promised us gold, you promised us wealth. Instead, we got mosquitoes, disease, and a governor who's clearly in over his head." Columbus is making desperate decisions. He's executing Spanish colonists for minor infractions. He's creating more and more brutal policies toward the Taino people. The man is unraveling. In March 1496, Columbus leaves Hispaniola and returns to Spain. He leaves his brothers, Bartholomew and Diego, in charge. And somehow, things get worse. His brothers abandon La Isabela entirely and found a new settlement on the southern coast, Santo Domingo. And that city, built on Spanish brutality, indigenous slavery, and broken dreams, becomes the capital of the Spanish Caribbean for the next 300 years. Columbus himself, he'd returned to the Americas twice more, but he never recovered his reputation. By 1500, he was arrested by a Spanish royal investigator and sent back to Spain in chains. The same chains he had put on so many others.
He died in 1506, still believing he'd reached Asia, still claiming he'd discovered a route to the Indies. He never knew he'd stumbled onto entire continents.
So let's talk about what Columbus's second voyage actually meant. Because here's the thing. We celebrate Columbus Day in America. We name cities after him. We put his statue in parks. But what did this man actually do? He didn't discover America. Millions of people already lived here. He wasn't even the first European to reach the Americas. The Vikings beat him by 500 years. What he did do was trigger the largest demographic catastrophe in human history. Let's look at the numbers. In 1492, there were an estimated 60 to 100 million indigenous people living in the Americas. That's roughly equivalent to the entire population of Europe at the time. By 1600, just over a century later, that number had dropped to 5 to 10 million. We're talking about a population decline of 90%. 90%. Disease was the primary killer. Smallpox, measles, typhus, influenza. But let's be absolutely clear, disease doesn't operate in a vacuum. The Spanish Encomienda system weakened indigenous people through forced labor, malnutrition, and psychological trauma that made them more susceptible to disease. The Spanish destroyed indigenous food systems and replaced them with European crops that didn't grow. That caused starvation, which made people more vulnerable to disease. The Spanish separated families, disrupted communities, and destroyed social structures. That meant fewer people to care for the sick, which increased death rates. Disease was the weapon, but colonialism pulled the trigger. And here's what really gets me. This pattern, the exact same pattern, repeated itself across the entire Western Hemisphere. Hispaniola, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Peru, North America. Every time Europeans arrived, the same thing happened. Disease, enslavement, forced labor, population collapse. The Encomienda system became the blueprint for Spanish colonialism for 3 centuries. Millions of indigenous people, people with rich cultures, sophisticated societies, thousands of years of history, were worked to death in silver mines, gold mines, sugar plantations. And it all started here, on this second voyage in 1493. So when someone tells you Columbus was a hero or a great explorer, remember this story. Remember the Taino people who had their hands cut off for failing to find gold that didn't exist. Remember the mothers who chose to poison their children rather than watch them enslaved. Remember Caonabo who fought back and died in chains. Remember the 300,000 Taino people on Hispaniola who became 500 in just 55 years. History isn't about good guys and bad guys. It's about understanding what actually happened. And what happened in 1493
The year is 1493. 17 ships, 1,200 men, one devastating voyage. From this moment forward, the world would never be the same. European empires would rise. Indigenous civilizations would fall. The Atlantic slave trade would begin, bringing millions of Africans in chains to replace the indigenous workers who died. 3 continents connected through violence, disease, and exploitation. The Columbian Exchange, they called it, as if it was a fair trade. It wasn't. But here's what we can do. We can remember. We can tell the truth about what happened. We can honor the people who were here first, the Taino, the Arawak, the countless indigenous nations who had thriving civilizations long before any European ships appeared on the horizon. We can acknowledge that the modern world, with all its wealth, all its power, all its technology, was built on a foundation of suffering. And maybe, just maybe, if we understand that history, we can do better going forward.
The double helix unwinds, revealing the enduring legacy of the Taino people.
Before we end this, there are a few things that never make it into history books. Things that completely change how we understand this story. First, the Taino people weren't passive victims. They resisted, they adapted, they survived. When you hear the Taino went extinct, that's not completely true. Genetic studies show that modern Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, and Cubans have significant Taino DNA, somewhere between 10 and 15%. The culture was suppressed. The language was lost. But the people, they're still here. Their descendants are still here. Second, Columbus wasn't working alone. Queen Isabela and King Ferdinand, they knew what was happening. They received detailed reports about the slavery, the brutality, the death tolls, and they did basically nothing. Why? Money. The Spanish crown was getting 1/5 of all the gold extracted from the Americas. They called it the Royal Fifth. They didn't care how that gold was obtained. They just wanted it to keep flowing. Third, there were Spanish voices speaking out. Bartolomeo de las Casas, that priest I mentioned earlier, he spent his entire life documenting Spanish atrocities and fighting for indigenous rights. His writings, they're some of the only detailed accounts we have of what really happened. He didn't stop the genocide, but he made sure the truth would survive. And that matters. Because 500 years later, we're still reading his words. We're still learning from them. We're still having this conversation. The numbers. Columbus's Second Voyage, 1493. 17 ships departed Spain. 1,200 men arrived in the Caribbean. 300,000 estimated Taino population on Hispaniola in 1492. 60,000 Taino remaining by 1508. 90% of indigenous population decline across the Americas by 1600. These aren't just statistics. Every number represents a person, a family, a story that was never told. Remember them. in memory of the Taino people and all indigenous nations of the Americas whose lives, cultures, and histories were forever changed by European colonization. We remember, we learn, we honor. From the frozen tundra of the Ice Age to mammoth hunters stalking giants across ancient plains, from America's first civilization rising in the jungles to cities that rivaled the greatest in the world, we've uncovered some amazing stories together. But you know what? There are hundreds more waiting to be told. Subscribe right now because we're diving into every forgotten chapter, every hidden truth, every incredible moment that shaped America. This journey, it's just beginning. Come with us.